Okay, so when we talk about continuous graphs, so yesterday we talked about discrete, which means non-connected dots. It just looks like random dots plotted on a graph. Continuous means that the graph is connected, whether by a line, a shape, but they're connected somehow. So that's what continuous means. In order to show the domain and range of a continuous graph, we need to use what we call interval notation, okay? And this will look familiar because we went over it when we did inequalities, but we're just gonna do it like it's brand new. So remember domain and range. Domain is all your possible x values, and especially today we're gonna scan from left to right, okay, along the x-axis. And then the range is your possible y values, and we're going to scan my pencil from down to up, or low to high is how I like to describe it, low to high, along the y-axis, okay? So before we get started, I want to go over what the interval notation looks like and when to use what. So when we talk about interval notation, we're going to be using parentheses and brackets, depending on certain situations. So if, and I wish this was on here somewhere, but if a graph, if you notice that an endpoint is an arrow, or if you notice that it is an open circle, then we are going to use parentheses. If you notice that it touches, and you'll see what I mean by touches, or if it's a closed circle, then we're going to use brackets. So keep that in mind as we're going through this. So take number 1, for example, okay? I'm going to first start with the domain. That means my x. That means from left to right. So if I look at this graph right here, put your pencil on the farthest left point, okay? That's this arrowhead right here. That farthest left point is an arrow. And since it's an arrow, we're going to use parentheses to begin with. Now, does an arrow stop? So an arrowhead implies that it's going to go on forever and ever and ever and ever. So that means we're going to use negative infinity because it's going to go forever to the left. Then I put my pencil on the farthest right that the graph goes. And the farthest right it goes is this arrowhead over here. Again, it is an arrow, so it's going to be parentheses. And since it goes on forever and ever and ever and ever, that means it's positive infinity going to the right. Now, whenever you have negative infinity to positive infinity, this is also called all reals because it goes from all values to the left, all values to the right. Now, if I go for my range, this is low to high. So put your pencil on the lowest point that it goes, and that's right here. Notice it's not an arrowhead, it's not a closed circle, it's not an open circle. This is what I refer to when I think of touches. So it touches this point and then bounces back. So because it touches, we are going to use a bracket. And where does it touch? So think about the y value here, the y-axis. Where is this on the y-axis? Well, if this is 0, this is -1, -2. So it touches on -2, okay? Then I put my pencil on the the highest it goes, and the highest it goes is this arrowhead. Where you're like, Miss, I've already used the arrowhead. We can use it more than once because this is the highest it goes. And since it is an arrowhead, we're going to use parentheses. And since it's going to go forever and ever and ever up, that means it's going to be positive infinity. Okay. Number 2, so that wasn't the easiest one to start with, but it's pretty basic. Number 2, again, domain is the left to right. So put your pencil on the farthest left. That's right here. So if you notice, it touches. It's a circle that touches that and then turns around and goes back. Since it touches, we're going to use a bracket and figure out what is this x value? How far left is this? And I look at the x-axis. This is 0, -1, -2, -3. So it touches -3. Then you put your pencil on the farthest right, and that's over here, and it touches as well, so it's bracket again. And it goes, how far right is this? That means how far right on the x-axis is it? That's +3. It touches +3. If I do the range, this is low to high. So if I put my pencil on the lowest point, it touches and then goes back, so that's a bracket. How low is this? Well, on the y values, this is -3 also. And then I put my pencil on the highest point, and how high is it touches, so it's a bracket. And how high does this go on the y-axis? Positive 3. So they look really similar, but we're looking at the x-axis and the y-axis. Okay, number 3. So domain is your x, which is your left to right. So put your pencil on the farthest left. It's an arrow, so since it's an arrow, that's parentheses. And since it's going to go forever and ever and ever to the left, that's negative infinity. Then I put my pencil on the farthest right, that's over here. And then it's an arrow also, so it's parentheses. And since it's an arrowhead, that means it's going to go forever and ever to the right, so that's positive infinity. And just like number 1, if you have negative infinity to positive infinity, this is another way to write all reals. Now range is your y's. This is low to high. If you put your pencil on the lowest point, that's an arrow, so it touches. It's an arrow, so it's parentheses. And since this is an arrow, it's going to go forever and ever down, so it's negative infinity. Then I put my pencil on the highest point. This is an arrow also, so it's parentheses. And it's going to go forever and ever up, so it's going to be positive infinity. Since I have negative infinity to positive infinity, this is all reals also. Number 4, domain first, that's my x values. Put your pencil on the farthest left. That means this arrowhead over here. Since it is an arrow, it's going to go parentheses, and that means forever and ever, so that's negative infinity. Then I'll put my pencil on the farthest right, and that's an arrowhead also, so parentheses. And it's forever and ever to the right, so that's positive. You guessed it, negative infinity to positive infinity, that's all reals. My range is lowest. Right here, these are kind of tied, but that's okay because they're both arrows. So my lowest is an arrow, which means parentheses. And that means they're both going to go forever and ever down, so that's negative infinity. If I go to my highest point, right here, it touches. Notice it goes up, touches, and then turns back, so that's bracket. Okay, so it is possible to mix it up. And then how high does this go on the y-axis? That's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it goes as high as positive 4. Now it gets into some interesting graphs here. Number 5 is, so if I start with my domain, that's my x values. If I put my pencil on the farthest left, that's this point right here. So it goes, touches, and then bounces back. So it is a bracket since it touches. How far left is this on the x-axis? Well, if this is 0 in the center, this is negative 1. So it touches negative 1 and then bounces back. Then I put my pencil on the farthest right that it goes, and it also touches and bounces back. So that's a bracket. How far right is this on the x-axis? Well, this is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it touches 5. On the range side, low to high, okay? Lowest point is right here. So it touches, that means it's a bracket. How low is this on the y-axis? So this is where people get a little trick messed up on, okay? So it gets a little tricky. Their instinct is to look at the x-axis, but no. How low is this on the y-axis right here? So how low is this? This is 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. So it touches negative 3. Then how high does it go? It touches, so it's a bracket. And how high is this on the y-axis? Well, this is 0, 1, 2, positive 3. Okay, so when it comes to domain and range, domain you're looking at the x-axis, and range you're looking at the y-axis, so be careful. Number 6, domain is left to right. So if I put my pencil on the farthest left, that's an arrow. That means it's parentheses. Arrow means it's going to go on forever and ever, so that means negative infinity to the left. If I put my pencil on the farthest right, this is an arrow also, so it's parentheses. Arrow means forever and ever to the right, so positive. And since I have negative infinity to positive infinity, this is all reals. If I put my pencil on the lowest point, that's this arrowhead. Since it is an arrow, it is parentheses. It will go forever and ever down, so it's negative infinity. If I put my pencil on the highest point, this is arrowhead, so it's parentheses, and it's forever and ever up, so positive. And since it's negative to positive infinity, this is all reals also. Okay, number 7, so just a few more practice problems. Number 7, if I go my domain, this is how far left does it go? So if I look at the farthest left, it's an arrow, so that's parentheses. And then since it's an arrowhead, I'm going to, arrow means forever and ever to the left, so that's negative infinity. If I go to the farthest right, it's also an arrowhead, so this is parentheses. Forever and ever to the right is positive infinity. Negative infinity to positive infinity is all reals. Now range, this is where this particular graph, okay, yes, we see the arrows, but think about how low this graph goes. So this is the lowest it goes, and this is the highest it goes. So it kind of stays within that little window there. It's just going to keep going loop-de-loop, 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 that kind of thing. So how low does it go? So all three of these points are the lowest. And since they all three touch, that's bracket. And how low is this on the y-axis? Well, this is 0, 1, -1, -2, -3. Then I put how high does it go? They all three touch, so this is 0, 1, 2. And since they touch, it is a bracket. Number 8, domain, so your x's. How far left does it go? So here's my left point. It touches and then turns back around, so that's a bracket. And so how far left is this on the x-axis? Well, this is 0, so this is -1. So it touches -1 and turns around. How far right does it go? So these arrows are tied, but they are both arrows, so it's parentheses. And they both go forever and ever to the right, so that's positive infinity. Range, this is how low to high. So my lowest point is this arrowhead. That means it's parentheses, and it's going to go forever and ever down, so that's negative infinity. Then I go, how far high does it go? So that's also an arrow, which is parentheses. And how high does it go means it goes forever and ever up. So that's positive infinity. Negative infinity to positive infinity is all reals. Okay. Then we come into these special ones. So let me show you these. Number 9. So all you see here is this vertical line going up and down. Okay. So let's look at it. If I look at the domain, okay, how far left to how far right? Well, put your pencil on the farthest left it goes. Now put your pencil on the farthest right. It's the same spot, okay? So it doesn't go beyond this line right here. It doesn't go further to the left or further to the right. All it's doing is going up and down. So how do I write this one? So it touches because it's on this line. So it touches, so it is a bracket. And what is this x value? So if I look at it, this is 0, 1, 2. And farthest right is also 2, so it's a bracket. So it's just a value by itself, it's just 2. Now, that's not the same thing as the y values. So how low does this go? This is an arrow, and so it's an arrow, it's parentheses, and goes forever and ever down, so it's negative infinity. Then I go, how far high does it go? And it's an arrow also, so parentheses. And it's forever and ever up, so it's positive infinity. Negative infinity and positive infinity is all reals. So it's a weird one. Then you look at number 10, and it's only a horizontal line that goes sideways, okay? So domain, how far left does it go? Well, here, the farthest left is an arrow, so that means it's going to go forever and ever to the left, so parentheses, negative infinity. How far right does it go is also an arrow, and it's going to go forever and ever to the right, so that's positive infinity, parentheses, which is also all reals. Now, if I look at low to high, put your pencil on the lowest point. Now put your pencil on the highest point. Same point. So it doesn't go any lower than this, and it doesn't go any higher than this. But it does touch, so it's a bracket. And how low and how high is this? Well, it only goes on the y-axis at 0, -1, -2, -3, -4. So those two are some special cases, okay?